Friends, family and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog, and as always I'm going to date stamp this. It's year 4 blog 34, or in legacy numbers it's blog 190, and it's dated the 12th of October 2025. And I usually start off, just by talking generally. The weather, it's cold. Colder in here, actually, I think, than it is out there. My mother's got my heater. We need to keep both rooms warm, so I probably need to buy another little heater. Got a little bit of a problem, actually, because we've got central heating and we've got radiators. And I've bled all the pipes, but there's one radiator I can't get to, and it's in my mum's room where the bed is. And there's a bed and then a table and then a sort of like cupboard, and the end of the radiator is right at the far end of the wall, so I'd have to go over the bed, over the table, over that. You get the idea. And it's the only one I can't bleed, and I've noticed that the radiators are not getting warm, and yet the central heating is on because we get hot water out the tap. So it's obviously air in the pipes, and I've gone round all of the radiators bar that one, and I bet you any money that's the one with the air in. So I've got a little job to do this afternoon, haven't I? Because I've got to move the bed out and all of that sort of stuff to try and sort that out. But, once that's done, I won't need to use the heaters so much. So it's worth doing. So I'll be doing that this afternoon. My mother's been really interested in the darts, as she always is. And so we've been watching together since Monday the darts, and I think it's the final tonight. So we've got something to look forward to, my mother and I. So that'll be nice. It's nice to do a sort of like mum and son type thing. It's the one thing that I sort of like have been trying to get through to my sister, in the fact that we should care for each other, right? I should recognise when she's tired. I should recognise when her emotional state is low. She should do the same for me. And as we get darker, I want her to understand that although there is times that I might need her in the evening for me to take over the evening part, it makes perfect sense. If you think about it, I'm in the room with my mum at sort of like 8 o'clock, waiting for my sister to turn up. She'll turn up any time between 8 and 9 to get my mum to bed. Then we have to get her into bed, and I'm sort of like a little bit of a janitor, because my sister will take over, because that makes sense when there's two carers that are equal. One is a male, one is a female, and you're looking after a female. My mother needs to have women's-y things done, is the best way to put it. And at the very beginning, that was the whole point on why my sister sort of like did that. But we're 6 months down the line, and I've had to do all sorts of things like that I don't really like to talk about. But you can imagine, if your mum's constipated, you've got to do things you really wouldn't want to do with your mother's backside, or putting barrier cream that stops your mother getting sore when she's wearing pads and all of that sort of stuff. But we get by in the evening. I do it on a Friday, I do it on a Sunday. The argument I had about the Friday, so I won't go down that route. But if one of your carers, and it's a family member, is happy for you to do Friday and Sunday, why not the whole week? She must trust me, therefore, to look after mum. So I look at it like this: even if you make a mistake in the evening, you've always got your sister in the morning to correct it. Do you see what I mean? So in my head, I'm going, this doesn't make sense. I have to hang around, then I have to wait for her in the living room, to wait for the bus to arrive to get her out the house so I can lock the door and go to bed. If I get my mum to bed early, I can go to bed early. Do you see what I mean? There's no hanging around, there's no waiting, all of that sort of stuff. So it makes perfect sense from a mental point of view and from an exhaustion point of view. So I do think of my sister, but she doesn't want to do that yet. And I go, well, I don't get it, but okay. And that's because I don't want arguments. It's like that. And they're niggly things. You might think of them as niggly things, but they get to you after a while. You know, you do this for 5 or 6 months and little things turn into big things. And that's what I'm sort of like getting to. But anyway, we talk about me a little bit later on. We'll talk about the news now. And as always, we talk about the war. Now, I've already mentioned that when we get to the new year, when it comes to New Year's Day, I probably will stop reporting about the war. I always said it'd be there until the end, but I never envisaged it'd be 4 years. And to be quite honest, we know I just want it to end. So me reporting on it doesn't really do much. But here we go. This is what I read about the war this morning, because I do this on a Sunday in the morning. First thing, go to all the news, because I want it to be current and date stamp this, if you see what I mean. So it says, Zelensky has urged Trump to broker a peace deal in Ukraine like he did in the Middle East, as he has had a very positive, held a very positive and productive phone call following a major Russian attack on Kiev's energy infrastructure. Yeah, Russia attacked the energy infrastructure just recently, and of course there has been a major breakthrough in the Middle East. Zelensky congratulated the ceasefire plan between Israel and Hamas. He said, if a war can stop in one region, surely other wars can stop also. Can't agree more. You see what I mean? There was other parts to that report that basically said that they're negotiating cruise missiles, so basically they have to continue down the route of how we're going to protect ourselves. And apparently NATO has actually accommodated more jets to patrol the outskirts of Ukraine based on these drones that have been going there. So it's day to day as normal, with Zelensky basically praising Trump and saying, hey Trump, now that you've done that, hey, maybe you can concentrate on us. You know what I mean? So sort of predictable week in regards to all this. So we get to the UK, and UK sort of like includes the world news if it affects us, and of course it does. So the peace deal that I mentioned earlier. So the peace deal has started between Israel and Hamas this week, with hostage releases starting on Monday. Yes, so they're releasing all of the hostages. There was major news on Friday talking about 72 hours of this and 48 hours of this, and who's being released and who's not being released, and concerns about the fact that there are actually convicted criminals that will be released in part of this, which is something that you couldn't sort of micromanage. You know, if you turn around and say all prisoners, then it's all, isn't it? So it's not who, you know, did what and was criminal and they actually admitted and were convicted. It's all. So yeah, that was a concern to the media. It was that question that was raised over and over again. Because they'll be free, and that means they can go around the world. I take it, although there'll probably be restrictions on leaving the country and stuff. As I mentioned last week, it was the Labour conference. It was the Conservative conference, and it was held in Manchester. There wasn't much to talk about with this. Scrutiny will always be on the powering politicians, not the ones that are big but are not in power, and that's the Conservatives at the moment. What else was in the media? So the media was praising the life of Jilly Cooper after her death this week. She had a fatal fall earlier in the week, and everybody was talking about her life, her books, her legacy. She was 88. It's horrible to hear of her fall at 88. My mother is 84. She collapsed. So I sort of get it. I take it the fatal fall was down the stairs or whatever it is. This is why my mother does not go upstairs. So the only thing I can really remember about Ginny Cooper myself was all the hoo-ha about the book Riders. And I remember the front cover, it was because she was on so many sort of like book interviews. It was a picture of, I think it was some lady's backside with white riding jodhpurs, you know what I mean? With a man's hand on her backside. And Ginny Cooper was well known for these sort of like romancy type books with lots of sex in them. I mean, we're talking written word, graphic talking of lovemaking. So yeah, I do remember that as a teenager or in my 20s, that Riders cover, and it's almost in my memory in the same way that Wimbledon poster with the woman walking towards the netting and her skirt's lifted up, scratching her ass or something. It's one of those sort of like images, like Baywatch images or images of Farrah Fawcett majors in the 70s that young lads were impressionable, sort of like remember. Yes, there was a lovely news article on Friday when I was watching the news where the primary care and secondary care are changing a policy where they're going to be more observant of child and old age pensioners for early catching of cancer. There was this heartwarming and terribly sad story where they showed this young girl. I mean, she was diagnosed with a lump on her head, and they didn't catch it as being a form of cancer. And this growth grew and grew and grew until she was 18 months old, and then she died. And you should have seen this picture of her very early on, sitting down where this growth was. You couldn't really see it in the photograph. And then you saw all the later pictures and some video footage as well of this growth. I mean, it covered the whole of her face, and she had just started chemotherapy, which took a month from the moment they agreed to chemotherapy to the moment she got her first one, and she died several days later. And it's such a sad thing. So apparently, if you're ill for over 2 weeks, they'll start doing observations in regards to being possibly cancer and other little markers in regards to catching cancer early. I hope they roll that out to every person rather than old age pensioners and children. But I do think it's great that they're doing something for children and they're doing something for old age pensioners. And the last thing really was that thousands, and this was based on a earlier story, thousands turned out to Ricky Hatton's funeral. He was the boxer that I talked about about a week or so ago. My dad and I bonded when I was in Manchester with phone calls in regards to Ricky Hatton fights, and I actually went to the Manchester Evening Arena and saw a couple of his fights, and they were some of the most happy days. I remember calling my dad while I was actually at the Manchester Evening Arena, giving a blow by blow while he was watching it on Sky Sports, or if Sky Sports weren't showing it, it would be on the radio, and we would both be listening, and it was great, happy times. And I heard today, this was the last thing that I put, that Diane Keaton, the actress, has died at 79. And it's weird about Diane Keaton because she's sort of like more well known for being in a lot of Woody Allen films, and Woody Allen is not in favour. Do you know what I mean? For his media presence in regards to his private life. And so it seems that if you start mentioning his films, people shut off immediately because it's, you know, quite distressing, some of the stuff that was going on with Woody Allen. But you should never take away a performance in a film because of that. I mean, the things that I remember from Woody Allen is Annie Hall, Radio Days, and Manhattan specifically, those three films. But she was also in The Godfather. I mean, she was in at least two of those films. I think Godfather 1 and 2. She was also in, because I like Steve Martin, she was in Father of the Bride. And although I never really liked the remake Father of the Bride, even if it did have Steve Martin in it, I do remember watching the films. There's one particular line in the first film. Steve Martin's looking at his daughter and she's talking to her father to say she's going to get married. And she's got, and he's looking at her, and instead of seeing an adult woman, he sees a little girl, and she's got this little childlike voice. He said, "I've met a young man and I'm going to get married," like this. And he sort of double takes and then looks, and then she's an adult again. But I can almost think, even though I'm not a father, what that would be like, that your little girl is going to get married, and you obviously know as a man what men are like, and you think, I'm going to kill this bloke. I'm going to absolutely roast him. Because if he's got a condom in his wallet or something like that, I'm going to absolutely, you know, because that means any time could be sex time. Do you know what I mean? So I can sort of like imagine it a little bit. Anyway, enough of that. That's talking about Diane Keaton, a fantastic actress. And, you know, it was sad to hear that happened yesterday. And her hearing about the news this morning. So we get to my week, and I kept it very short last week. If you remember, the recording broke, and I'm concerned now. I'm looking now to see if it says record and how many minutes is going on, and whether I should stop it. So at least I've captured this bit and it won't break. Do you know what I mean? Because if my machine crashes, I lose the lot again. But it's holding up. So we'll keep going, and we'll get the work bit out the way first, because there's very little to talk about work. One of our people was off work on Monday and Tuesday on holiday. We were all expecting that person to come back Wednesday, and you turn up on Wednesday and you find out, no, the person's sick, and it could be long-term sick. And the instant thing that you think about when something like that happens is, I hope the person's all right, first of all. The second thing is, how's that going to alter the plans for everybody at work? Because we're going to have to take new things on, and the concentration apparently this month is training. And it's just happening at the worst time when it comes to me with training, because I've just been diagnosed with something that's taken up most of my mind. My mum's in a terrible state with her leg. Lots of things going on with family at the moment, and you just think to yourself, how am I supposed to concentrate on this? How am I going to get through this? But I've always found a way. That's the thing. But I can't see me going up to my manager. He's very young. I don't mind that. I don't mind a young man, who's higher up than me. Even though I should be a manager still, it was taken away for the wrong reasons. Turning around and saying, right, we're going to do things this way this month. You know, I'll embrace it. But we've come to the point where he wants us to book 3 half days through the month. And that means out of a 4 or 5 week month, I've got to find half a day. And I know full well I'm going to choose a day and then something's going to happen. And then you have to alter it to another day, and you know that you look at those days in your diary, you chose that particular day because it was empty, all the others are filled. And you go, well, there you go. Where it makes more sense to do an hour here or an hour there when you know that nothing's going on in your private life. It works for people that don't have caring responsibilities. It doesn't work very well for people who do. And this is where I think a manager is always looking at the numbers and going, oh yeah, we'll do it this way, and then forgets that there's one member in the team that might not fit for. But it's the needs of the many, not the needs of the few, to do a Star Trek quote. And there are more that aren't in my position than there are of me. So I get it. So work was, nothing really. We were all supposed to go to Birmingham on Thursday. It was cancelled because I couldn't go. I was told that it was more than that, but I'm pretty sure of that. There was a survey that's been pushed for us to do. He said it was anonymous, but it keeps coming back and saying, has everybody done it? Because I want our team to have 100% doing this survey. How can you tell my team's done 100% if it's anonymous? Do you see what I mean? In your head, you're going, that makes no sense. If it's anonymous, you don't know whether I've done it or not. There you go. I just look at it like that. So we'll talk a little bit about my mum. So it all started really on Monday. We had enough of this leg problem. We all agreed if it continued on Saturday and Sunday, my sister and I last week, that on Monday we'd make a call to the GP. We did that. My sister was put in a queue and never going to call. She had to leave at 2:30, and I said I'd let her know if the GP called. And he did. Just as I was finishing work at 4 o'clock, he phoned up and I gave all the information I could, but couldn't give all the information that my sister might have extra information on, because my sister is the person that, when we're getting my mum out of bed, holds the legs and I hold the top half, because it's the heavier half, and I'm a bloke, so of course, I can sort of lift her up and all of this sort of stuff out of bed and rub her back and all of that sort of stuff. And my sister can do the gentle trying to get her legs to the ground so it's not putting too much pressure on and all of that sort of stuff. So of course I left I phoned my sister, it went to voicemail, and then I sent a text message and got no call back all the way up until the point where she turned up in the evening, and I said, why didn't you answer your phone? She didn't get the call, she said, and she showed me her phone, and lo and behold, it weren't there. And in the morning it turned up. Now, I've said this to my sister before. She lives 2.5 miles away, and there are only so many masts, and we're on different providers. It's probably that when she goes from her house to this house, she needs to turn the phone off and turn it back on so it retriangulates. And then when she goes back to her home, she does the same thing. Now, it seems like a big faff, but it seems more likely that the issue is the mast that we're triangulated between. And I urged her to go to her provider and then bring up the map and see what the coverage is like for her provider. Now, I've done the same with mine, and I'm covered all the way up to her house, but she might not be because she's on a different provider. And I've got a funny feeling it's that. And that's going to be an issue if there was an emergency. Because if I need to get in touch with her and say, you got to come home quickly, mum's in a bad way, she ain't going to get the call. And then when she turns up in the evening, if something really bad has happened, she's going to be going, why didn't you tell me? She doesn't have a landline. So the reliance is on that phone. So it is a concern to me, and I've brought it to her attention, and that's all I can do. But going back to the GP, he got the basic information. He booked to do a home visit, but it wasn't going to be till Friday. So you can imagine us. We have to get our mum out of bed, and on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday will go by and it'll all be the same. And we have to wait for this GP. Anyway, he turned up on Friday, and it was happily it was in the morning. And he examined the leg and all of this sort of stuff. And he came back really saying that she needed a change in medication for 2 weeks. And it's going to be an observational 2 weeks. And she's been diagnosed with a gastro tablet because the particular tablet in question is one that I've taken for a long period of time. And it's a rough tablet. It's naproxen. And he's giving her a bloody high dose for her age. So we're a bit concerned with that. But he said that was required, plus something that you can get over the shelf, which is something called Senna. And Senna just helps with people that are having problems passing their waist, so, it stops constipation, basically. Softens the stool is the word, is what I was looking for. And so we got some tablet form of Senna, which takes away the sachets that my sister has to give and wait a day or so. There's things like Laxdalose and all sorts of stuff that you can get. We've tried it all. So we've got Senna. He's going to phone us now on the 24th. I asked him, is the prescription there now? And this was a troublesome question to ask, because I know what our pharmacist is like. It's inbuilt into the surgery. And basically, he said, I've done it electronically. It should be down there now. I will go down and give them a nudge and tell them it's urgent. I said, is it possible that he could send a text to say that's been done? And he said he really couldn't. He's got other patients to see. I totally got that. I said, well, the reason I asked that is every time I've gone down to that surgery to get my mum's tablets, urgent or not, they tell me it's 24 to 48 hours before the tablets are ready. And if you've gone down there and you've given them a nudge, I've got a problem, because there's no point going down in the afternoon. They'll say not ready. And if I go on a Saturday and it's not there, I have to wait till Monday. And that means the tablets that we're supposed to get into a system quickly will not be there till Wednesday, Thursday. And if I get them on Saturday, they'll be earlier. He said nothing he could do. And I said, well, because it's my mum and because it's important, I will walk down on Saturday. And I'm hoping that those tablets are going to be there. Roll on Saturday. I walked down, went into the pharmacist, said, we had a GP visit. They asked me for my mum's date of birth, and I gave her all of that. And they said, could you sit down and we'll get them ready? Which means they hadn't done them. But luckily, they had more pharmacists on than I'd seen before. Usually they have a skeleton crew. They have 2 people at the tills, where they call you over and say what you're here for. And they have 1 person at the back doing all the tablets. So they obviously hadn't done them Friday, so that was bad. They were getting them ready there Saturday. That's good. So I was there an hour. When all I could do really was look along the shelves, and I saw something that my mum might like, a chapstick. We put Vaseline on her lips so they don't dry in the night. And I bought my mum a chapstick. Cheap little thing. I just thought that'll just make my mum smile. And then I started looking at the leg supports that I wear, funnily enough. But I didn't want to spend something like 40 or 50 quid like I do, because I wear mine permanently, apart from at night where I take it off. But the cheap ones are made of like elastic fabric, and you have to pull it up and over the knee. And she doesn't even like us touching the duvet cover that then puts pressure on her knee, let alone pulling this thing. So it would have to be a strapped one. And the cheapest one they had there was £44. I didn't have that money on me. I am literally broke in regards to that sort of thing. And my sister does now have an attendance allowance. And it upsets me sometimes because she came in on Saturday and she had 24 roses to put in vases. Now that's lovely, right? You put them in the vases, my mum can see them, gorgeous, right? But my sister hasn't paid me back for any money that I've spent in the last 3 months. And 24 roses, I've bought those from florists and it's cost 50-60 quid. Now she assures me that they were in the sale and they were about £10 or something, and I believe her. But what about me? What about this strap that we've got to buy for? If I tell her that, she'll poo-poo it and say, don't think we need it, let's follow what the doctor says and all of this sort of stuff. And it just doesn't warrant an argument. I just think to myself most of the time, and it is most of the time, I'd have done it anyway. But it's not nice to know that your sister is back to normal in regards to money, and I'm down here in regards to finances because of everything I did for 5 or 6 months. It will always keep coming back to me and until the inevitable that happens to my mum, and then it'll just all come out in a big argument. I've kept all the receipts for everything that I bought for my mum so that people can see where I spent my money. I will think the same for my sister, and if she doesn't, I will have to do something. But right now, I love my sister. She's a carer. I'm a carer. It's concentrating on mum. These are just the thoughts that I would put into a diary, and I don't think too much of them. But they're there, so I mention it. So my week has all been getting my license back chasing. I phoned up on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now, you might think that that's overkill, but I'll explain how it all happened. On Monday, I did my standard, it's 3 days since I last called, what's going on? And I'm glad I did, because on Monday, they turned around and said, by the way, I don't know if anybody's told you this, Mr. Giles, but on the 2nd of October, we sent a letter to your GP for more information. And I didn't go ballistic. I went, seriously? And they said, what do you mean? And I just turned around and said, you've got medical letter that says this is a mistake, that we can't do the tests that you want because a mistake was made, and it's from a high up GP, and you're asking for medical evidence. And I'm going, and they're going, but we have to follow this process. And I'm going, but it's a stupid process. And what you have to understand is that I now need to phone the surgery and ask them whether they've got it there. And they said, do so, but that's what we're doing and that's what we're waiting for. And we've sent a letter to you to tell you the same thing. And I said, well, I haven't received it. And what was the date on Monday? Let's have a quick look. So they sent it on the 2nd, a Thursday, and that particular day was the 6th, and I hadn't received it. And I said, if I haven't received it, they ain't got it. Did you send it electronically? Did you send it by post? Couldn't tell me. So I phoned up the GP surgery and I said, is Anne Saunders there? Because that's the lady that's looking after my case. And they said, she's on holiday till the 20th. And my jaw dropped. I went, oh God. Because I know that Anne said that she's put in a note in my medical diary that only she will deal with anything to do with the DVLA, because I put in a complaint. And I put in a complaint because obviously I was told to contact the DVLA and shouldn't do. So I need to make sure that other people don't fall into this trap. So I had to then phone the DVLA again, didn't I? And I said, they haven't received it, because they told me they hadn't. And Anne Saunders is on holiday to the 20th. And they said, but any GP can look at it. And I said, you're not listening. They haven't received it. I haven't received it. There's no medical reason for it. And only Anne Saunders will be looking at it, because it's in my notes for only her to look at it. And she's not back to the 20th. And they said, nothing we can do. So, of course, I was left dismayed. And I just thought I'd phone on Wednesday, the GP surgery, and say, have you received this? And they hadn't. I my end didn't receive the letter till Thursday myself. So it took from Thursday to Thursday to get this letter, and all it said was, we've asked for more medical evidence from your GP, which I know because I phoned up. So I phoned up the DVLA and I said, you know how stupid this is, they haven't got it. This is Wednesday, by the way. And they said, nothing we can do. And I said, well, you can send it by email. No, we can't, because it's a secure document. I said, it's a questionnaire. It's got no medical evidence in it. You want the medical evidence, so send it to this general email address. So I gave it to her, and she asked me the question, are you happy for this document to go unsecured to this email address? I said, bloody right I am. Yes, press the button now. So she did, and I phoned the surgery, and I was told that I needed to speak to the doctor's secretary's department. So I had to rephone up, speak to them, and they said, no, you need to speak to our business partners who coordinate things with our doctors. But I'll get them to give you a call, and they didn't. So I phoned on Thursday, and I got a call back, and it was a lovely guy. His name's James. And he looked at my notes, and he came back to me within the hour, because he said, I'll phone you back. And I was a bit dismayed by that, because it's another waiting thing. And he came back and he said, I can see here that, yeah, we haven't, you have not been treated right. And to be quite honest, it's going on far too long. I can see here you're a carer. I can see that you've got a GP coming to see your mum. I'm going to take control of this. I haven't seen the document that you're talking about. It says here that Anne's going to be looking at it. I can see in her notes that she's put, only look at your medical history up until the 18th of August and no further, because it was a mistake. And I said, do you know what? That fills me with so much more confidence, you know, that something's going to happen. And lo and behold, on Friday, he sent a text message back. And he said, I did a lot of chasing, and I can understand your frustration speaking to the DVLA. They were absolutely atrocious. But I finally got the document in front of me. It's going to a GP now. He's going to fill it in. If he fills it in today, I'll send it off electronically to them today with your blessing. Do you give me your blessing? I said, yes, I do. Or Monday at the latest, because I will chase on Monday the GP. So we now have a document that's going there saying, why are you asking for medical evidence? It's a waste of time, because you know full well that you got a letter and it's a mistake. And here is the questionnaire, and he's told me what's in it. He says all the boxes that are ticked saying, is there any medical evidence? And he's ticked the box, no. And that bypasses all the way to the end where it says, please sign here, which is exactly the same as the S1 form that I filled in. So all that's going to happen is they get that, and then they have to reassess and give me my license back. I hope by the end of the week coming that happens. But even if it's there electronically, they took 8 weeks to get to this point, all with electronic scan documents. I will chase. That's all I can say. Every 3 days, so it'll be Wednesday, and then, although I can't phone on a Saturday, it will be Friday. And I'll be saying, what's the hold up? You've had this a week. Sort it now. Because by that point, we're at the 9th week. If you want to know, it's this all started 14th of August with my license being revoked on the, I think it was 16th, and the doctor's letter went 18th of August, and we're now 12th of October. Ridiculous. That's the end of that. So you know about me, you know about my mum, you know about... So we'll get to the shout outs, because that did take some time. It's probably about the same time as last week, but actually I had to do it again, so I cut a lot of it out. So let's get to the shout outs, and we've got a number of them here. Not so many as last week, so that means that that'll be a bit shorter, so hopefully we can keep the blog down a little bit. But I just want to reiterate what I always say, and that is a big thank you to everybody that just watches. I'm incredibly proud that people are interested. I do know that some of it is just being nosy, but a blog, which is a diary, I think is a bit more interesting than just a blog. You know, I'm not an influencer. I'm not a blog influencer. And some blogs are all based on just one thing, you know, like I'm going to do a Doctor Who retrospective or something or whatever. This is a diary of my life from what I want to disclose, not everything. There are things like I've been talking about my recent diagnosis. I haven't really said what it is. Some people have commented that my face is thinner, less of this, and it's quite true. But it's not cancer or anything like that. It's a life-changing thing, and you know, it started off with me actually, the weight loss, by the way, with me being sick because of the argument that happened between my family. 3 weeks of being sick it was almost like morning sickness, throwing up, worried about being safe in my own house, all of that sort of stuff. That's diminished, but then I got the diagnosis and my diet has changed. So it's all intertwined, and that's why you see a difference. And I mention it because I always mentioned in the first year, you will know if I am happy or sad, because when you're at your lowest ebb, you don't worry about your appearance. So you'll notice that I'm wearing the same clothes, or I'm unshaven or whatever. And even though I'm back at work, I can probably, you know, not shave or something, because I get up so early in the morning. It's a matter of getting my mum her tablets and me then catching up on work, because I had so many hours taken away from me for caring for my mum the day before. So it's a matter of getting my hours back up, because I still have to do the basic. So I'm conscious of that, and I start therefore at 7 in the morning, when actually you work 9 to 5 or 8 till 4. So if I start at 7, I've got a good hour I can get up. So at 6:30 I get up, and I give my mum a tablet before 7, and I sit religiously at my laptop 7 o'clock and try and get an hour's worth of work in. It's just as simple as that, really. And then I cut my lunch hours down. If I'm not doing the shopping, I'm back in half an hour. And if I have to work after 4 o'clock, I try to make it so I'm only working till about 4:15, because I know that my sister leaves at 2:30. So that's sort of how that works. But here's the shout outs, because I'm waffling. Wee Bob Art. These are in no particular order. Wee Bob Art, Robert's Retro Gaming, Steve's Gaming Part 2, Ian Hill The Ramblings, Colin Jones aka Ponder, Martroid, Carl Todd, Muckman-Movies, Rocket Bunny, Frank Holder. Absolutely wonderful. Now, it may be slightly shorter than last week, but it doesn't matter about that. It's all a matter about these people care enough that they've listened to the blog and want to comment or say something. Some of these people have channels, some of them don't. Anybody that's got a channel I try to shout out on. I'm a big person who likes to collaborate, and big up my friends. Anybody that does something on YouTube is taking their time away to do something, and they want to do it for their friends first and the rest of the subscribers. I find it very sad when somebody leaves. It's funny, I have this on joke with Ian Hill The Ramblings. I said, you know what, don't shout me out in the channel, right? Don't turn around and say, oh, and if you haven't done already, subscribe, right? Because every time he does that, I lose someone. And it's funny, he did it on Wednesday, I lost 2. And 2 to somebody that's got as little numbers as I've got is a big number. Somebody who's got thousands, 2's a pittance. So Ian, stop bloody shouting out. It's killing me. But that's the nonsense of YouTube. It might absolutely be nothing to do with that. And it could be YouTube's purgence of dead accounts. But there you go, you know. You never know. You don't know what's going on. And it's very important to me just to know that it's worth doing, if you see what I mean. I can do this blog, but I can record it and make it private. And it will be there then just for my family. I do it because I enjoy talking about my experiences, which is the next section, now that I've read out those people. So we'll go into the actual comments now. It's a section that I think a lot of people like because I read out verbatim. You know, it's totally there, and then I give you my thoughts if there's a question. So I do find it probably the most interesting part of the blog. And the top one, just looking at this, it's in no order. It just says most relevant on here. It's not sort by anything. So we bob out at the top. It says, "Hi Del, finally finished listening along today while I was changing the taps in my bathroom." I like to know this. Some people might even turn around. I was listening to your blog while I was on the toilet or something. It's quite good, that just makes me chuckle. Changing the taps in my bathroom. Cheers for keeping me company with your vlog. Taps changed now. No leaks so far. That's nice, isn't it? We all know now that he's got new taps and there's no leaks. So the world is at rest. That's brilliant. Anyway, hope life is treating you as well as it can. I started watching the John Candy documentary last night. Oh, right. So he did this Saturday last night. I'm about halfway through it as it was getting late. I've watched the whole thing, and I watched an earlier edition of it on Monday. There was a leak, and I watched it in 2 parts like you, Friday and Saturday. It was the only way to do it. And it was a wonderful documentary. If anybody what is into documentaries or into John Candy, in the same way that they did a Christopher Reeve documentary recently, absolutely fantastic to see his life and being remembered. So he continues, "Do you have a favourite John Candy movie? For me, it has to be Uncle Buck. One of those movies that if you catch it on TV while flicking channels, that I find myself leaving it on, even if it's in the background." Actually, yes, I've got a lot of Uncle Buck. John Candy. I keep thinking of him as Uncle Buck. John Candy films, and Uncle Buck is one of them. I love that. What is considered to be a horrible sort of like person, a person with attitude, doesn't treat his girlfriend very well, a person that you'd only call up as an emergency last resort if anything happens, is called upon by the family to look after the kids while they go off. I think it was a very sick mother or a funeral that they had to go to. But there we are. Uncle Buck is called in. Larger than life, huge presence, stocky. I don't like to say the word fat very often, but stocky and not liked by the kids. There's 2 that adore him and one that's a teenager that basically just thinks of him as being a slob. And it's the characteristic of turning that around. And Uncle Buck is just brilliant. In the same breath, I can mention Cool Runnings. Cool Runnings, a Disney film, and one of an early film that I bought on Laserdisc. Loved it. I loved the tunes. I loved the diversity in it. Watching these Africans go go to the Winter Olympics to do the bobsleigh run. And their individual little characters, they don't get on with each other. There's one that's weird and kisses an egg before they go down the bobsleigh, and they need to get certain times to do it. And they've hired John Candy. I nearly said Uncle Buck again. John Candy to be the coach. He used to be big into the bobsleigh, but was kicked out of the team for cheating. Put lead weights at the front of the bobsleigh to make it go faster. Something he regretted all his life. But he saw something in these guys. One of them is a sprinter, does the 100 meters. And he thought to himself, I could get a sprinter to push that bobsleigh, might have a chance. And it's just a great film. It's a very heartfelt film and based on a true story that actually did happen. Cool Runnings, absolutely marvelous. If you haven't seen that film, my God, where you been? It's a wonderful film, not talked about much, and a comedy where comedies are not talked about anymore. It should be brought to our attention now to say, Hollywood, make this type of film. Get a character like John Candy and embrace something like this and make it funny, not politically correct and all of this wokeness and stuff. Just brilliant. Next one, Spaceballs. I'm a space fan. Star Wars, Star Trek, Spaceballs. How can you not like Mel Brooks and his parodies? Spaceballs got everything in it. It's got Star Wars, Star Trek, everything, lightsabers, which he calls using the Schwartz, the Force. It's the Schwartz. You've got Yoda. It's yogurt, but it's not yogurt the great. It's just plain yogurt. Oh God, all the puns. Let's comb the desert. You see all these stormtroopers with big sod off brushes and combs combing the desert. So many things. Let's jam the radar. There's a big jar of jam smash against a big satellite dish. It's fun. And although I'm in trepidation of Mel Brooks being, 98 now, doing a Spaceballs 2, which he promised he'd do for the last nearly 30 years. He's now doing it. I'm just going, maybe it's the wrong thing to do. But Spaceballs. But we come to my number one film. I think it's probably my number one comedy, actually, but it's tied with a number of others, right? There's a number, there's Airplane and all sorts of films. But Planes, Trains and Automobiles will always be my favourite comedy. Steve Martin, John Candy, two totally distinctively different types of people on a journey to get home during Thanksgiving. And there's nothing else to say about that film other than I don't know anybody that hasn't put it on and gone, I enjoyed that. Even, just to the point of that was funny or it was enjoyable to being that's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life, right? All those different pillars. I haven't seen one that said, that's shit. What the hell's that all about? What a load of crap. Bored to tears. I've never known anybody say that about Planes, Trains and Automobiles. But I dare say I'm going to get comments now that say, oh, I thought it was shit. Fair dues. But I hear my words. I haven't seen or heard myself anybody, right? I don't get to see too many people, but in the past I had a lot of friends. They all loved it. So there you go. So make a comment if you want. Wee Bob continues, for all of your tribulations recently, you don't seem to be as tired when doing the vlog. It might be due to the change in weather, or perhaps you changed medication. Anyway, it's great to see, although I know you are having some health things that you're going through. all the best to you, your mum and your family, and thank you so much. Yes, and I've noticed I'm not sort of like getting tired or my eyes rolling or whatever, or look like I'm drunk. But it's more to do probably with sleep and weight loss and going to bed as early as possible as than I have. I still have restless sleep. It says it on my phone. It says you slept the right amount of hours, but it was restless, and so you might feel tired today. But it was to the point for about 5 or 6 months that I was getting 2.5 to 3 hours sleep. And if you carry that on for 7 days, and then you carry that on for 14 days, and then you carry it on for 31 days, and you do that for months, it has an effect. And I didn't have any time other than to prep my blog on a Saturday and then record it on a Sunday. So even though I had to do it twice last week, I don't remember seeing myself get tired at the end. So it's probably a good thing, and it probably means that I'm right in thinking there is no sleep apnea. It was just fatigue. Everything was fatigue. And we'll see what happens, because I'm still down to go to that clinic, and I'm still down to have training on my new problem. So we'll see how things go. So we're going to carry on just for a few more minutes more before I do take a break. And we go to Robert's Retro Gaming. I just want to say salute to Wee Baba. Robert's Retro Gaming, as you know, is Canadian royalty to me. I've known him a number of years. We played on a Minecraft server together. Always difficult to get a time where we could both be on it, because he'd be working when I'm sleeping, and I'd be on the game when he's sleeping. So it's very difficult, if you see what I mean. But he's got a channel, does a video a day, but usually it's like 2, especially at the weekend. The guy just doesn't stop. And it's Atari stuff mainly, but so much more. Minecraft, forgot what it's called now, Dwarf something or other. Dwarf Fortress, is it? I mentioned it anyway at the end. He does that. SNES. Not so much Commodore 64 as I'd like, but he does do it. Spectrum. Very, very intertwined with, I would say, Steve's Gaming. They're so close, it would seem. They mention each other every week. I don't think there's been a week gone by in the last 2 months where Robert hasn't mentioned Steve and Steve hasn't mentioned Rob. So that's nice to see. It makes me a bit jealous, because I've always said I wanted to collaborate, and never get to that point where I can. And that's sad for me. It's why I miss Denny so much in regards to our chats and talks on YouTube, where we would be talking about the Twilight Zone or the Outer Limits or Laurel and Hardy or whatever, because concentrating on something and chatting about something that you both enjoy is lovely. But anyway, I digress. Canadian royalty, go and see his channel. Subscribe if you can, please. It's got here, hi Del, I'm travelling with my family this week and next. I'm only about a third of the way through your blog. I caught that you had re-recorded the whole thing. That's a huge pain. I'm sorry that happened. So far, I haven't really heard you talk too much about your week, how your week was, and how your mum's doing. I wish you and her the best as always. It was there, Robert. It was at the beginning, but it was cut down. There wasn't much to talk about because it was all DVLA and the normal working week and my mum's leg not getting much better. So you might have missed it because I probably abbreviated it down to just like that, a line. But I've extended it, so I hope you appreciate that when you do get to listen to it. And I don't mean listen to it and take yourself away from your holiday. That would be wrong. But anyway, if you do get time, I'm there for you. You've put in it, I'm in Italy for the next 2 weeks with my family. Have you ever been to Italy? ? If so, maybe you could share a memory or two. If not Italy, what about elsewhere in Europe? It would be great to hear about your memories. Oh, well, I have actually mentioned that, Rob. Very early on, well, in the 90s, should I say, very early on in the 90s, at a time where Mr. Hill, a Formula One driver, was trying to go to be world champion against Schumacher. I was on the internet and spoke to a girl who was in a town called Wuppertal in Germany. And I told her, if you ever want to see a race, you can come here, because I'm literally, and it is literally, 15 miles, possibly a couple more miles than that, like 17, from Silverstone. And at that particular point as well, I knew someone that worked at Silverstone, and I used to go into the paddocks. So anything you want, just do that. There'll be a place for you to stay. And she came over. Literally, as well, I used that word again, and it was true. That particular weekend of Silverstone. And true to my word, I got the tickets because I still needed to buy those. And we went to Silverstone. And she loved my mum and dad. They were all over her. Lovely girl, tall, thin, English broken a little bit, spoke in German when she couldn't understand an English word. But she offered for me to go over, and I did. So I think I flew into Dusseldorf and then travelled to Wuppertal, because they're not too far away from each other. I think that's how it worked. I don't think it was direct into Wuppertal. And I got to see her apartment. She had her own apartment. I was living here. And she stayed actually in this, which was a bedroom. It was my nan's room. And it still had my nan's remnants in it. I was upstairs living in my old bedroom. And yeah, we got quite close with each other. I wouldn't call ourselves girlfriend and boyfriend, but you can imagine we got very, very close and what that means. And we went to an internet cafe, and we went to a restaurant, and we went to the different pubs. And, I just went over just a couple of weekends. But like anything, you drift apart because of the distance thing. And that upset me. But the last thing I did for her, she left a Formula One helmet with Damon Hill emblems all around it, because Damon Hill was a hero. As I said, I called him Mr. Hill, Damon Hill. And I sent it back to her, and we sort of lost touch after that, because it was very difficult for me to fly over. It's costly. She was in quite a high-powered job. I think she was a PA for someone. I was working at Lloyd's Bank, and I was going to night school, and I was working in a bar to pay for the night school. So you can imagine I didn't have that much money. Plus, I was saving all the time to go to the States at least once a year, because I bought a passport, and I'm one of those people that goes, this is a 10-year passport. I'm going to make sure I use it. So every year I had a plan that I was going to use it once a year to get my usage out of it. Otherwise, if you go through a year and you don't use it, you go, well, that was a bloody waste, wasn't it? I couldn't have a 9-year diary or an 8-year diary. They used to do shorter ones than 10-year. I think they were 5-year ones. Don't do that anymore. They're all 10-year. So, yeah, that happened. Only other times I've been to Europe has been with school trips. We went to skiing, I think, once, and I did go on one of those. Or did my sister go? No, I think I went. Yeah, it's a long time back, and it was with school. So there's that. But no, I haven't been anywhere else. It's one of those things where I've been to loads of places in America, all over the shop. I could be here all day listing the states that I've been to in America. Been to Germany, like I said. Been to Switzerland, like I said. Loads of places in England, obviously. But I haven't been to Italy, France, Finland, Sweden, Amsterdam. None of that. Pretty sad, really, isn't it? But I've been to the Dominican Republic. Went to a place called Puerto Plata. That was nice. 2 weeks, all inclusive. First time I've been on something that was all inclusive. That meant food when you want it, drinks when you want it, all free. And if you want to go out, this is the trouble. When you go to somewhere like Puerto Plata in the Dominican Republic, there are no end of people that are on site in that hotel that tell you, don't go. Don't go out of this complex. The taxi drivers will be begging. They will offer you to escort you around. They'll take you all around the places, drive you to anywhere, hang about waiting for you, all of that sort of stuff. And when you do go on the streets, there'll be the kids that will be begging, for you to give them money. And there's quite a bit of crime out there as well. But they do also say that there's some beautiful places, because in the streets there are people that have got potter's wheels and will show you their studio where they'll make a pot for you and have it glazed and burnt and with your own design on it and all that sort of stuff. And those are brilliant, but they're so in different places in the town. Some of them are in the rough areas, some of them are in the okay areas, that it's probably not wise to do so. Go on the excursions that the hotel offers, like going to a gambling casino and all of that sort of stuff. But I said, but you miss the beauty of the place. But you do get the beauty because you are off, the hotel is built on the edge of the beach, so you can just walk out of the hotel and onto the beach. They've got a path that takes you straight to it. So, and then you can walk along the beach as long as you want. And it was beautiful, and I did miles and miles walking along it. Gorgeous. So I've been there. That's enough of that. Anyway, hope I filled your dreams with you there, Robert. And I hope you have a great time in Italy. And I'm just going to take a break there because we've just gone over the hour. But I won't be very long. Just need to check on my mum and all of that, even though my sister's here. And I'll be back, as they say in Terminator 2. And I'm back, and a couple of minutes have gone by. I've put the washing into the dryer because I wash the washing machine is on every day, cleaning my mum's stuff and my stuff, and stuff has to go into the dryer. That takes a couple of hours, and the washing machine an hour and 47 minutes. That's specific, but it's 1 hour 47 minutes, 40 degree wash. And yeah, it's one of those chores that if you forget to do it, you're putting the stuff away at 7 at night, and your mum's going to bed at 8:30, and you're just rushing around because I cook my mum's tea at 6. So you can imagine if I finish work at 4, I'm washing up at 5, making dinner at 6, washing up at 6:30, putting the drying stuff away at 7, sitting with my mother at 8, 8:30, go to bed. There's no time. If that job was done by another, there's less for me to do, and that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about. But anyway, we're doing the shout outs, we're not talking about that. So we get to Steve's gaming. And as you know, I have to do my salute. You little bastard, you little shit, you're just too good. It's the law. But it's lovely all the time to speak to Steve. We don't do that so much anymore. We both, Robert and Steve, have said at some point we'll collaborate on something, and we still haven't after 4 years. It's amazing. You'd think that we'd have thought of something by now, but it is difficult, and collaborations are hard, and some people don't want to. I get it. But I still love their channels, and I still big them up as much as I possibly can. But anyway, let's see what Steve's got to say, shall we? It's always entertaining. So, hi Del, great blog. Well done for redoing it after all those problems. I hope this week was more bearable for you and your mum. Well, you know about that now. I've had a bit of a stinker this week, to be honest, but what can you do? That's exactly how I look at it. What can you do? It's there, isn't it? Thanks again for the game. That was very kind of you, and I do plan on continuing with it. Just had some stuff on my mind the past couple of days, so my videos have dropped off a bit. Anyway, I hope you are well. You need to take care of yourself as much as caring for your mum too. I will explain that. Steve's very important in my life, as is Denny and Robert and a lot of people that I mentioned. When I know that they've gone through the mill this year, they've had a bad year, and even though I've mentioned that Steve's on the up, it's not nice to know that there's a sale on in Steam where you can buy stuff for $1.99, that sort of thing. And they're saying, I can't afford that even. And I know I want his channel to succeed, and I know he does his home soft stuff and that, but he used to getting his teeth into a longer game that Steam might provide. It could be mining, it could be space, it could be puzzle, it could be anything orientated. And I looked at it and went, there's a sale on, I can help here, I'll do it. And the only downside is Steve's a very proud person. He's private but not private, if you know what I mean. He vents a lot and all of that sort of stuff, what's going on in his life. But he doesn't know how to accept gifts, and in that way he's like me, because I don't know how. I'm terrible. Somebody gives me a gift and I'm going, oh, what can I do to show my appreciation, all of that sort of stuff. So I get it. But I also know just how much joy it can give, and I know how it could make his channel grow. And that's what I want. It doesn't matter that I've got low numbers, he's got higher numbers, all of that sort of stuff. It's a matter of making your friend feel wanted, needed, and a bit of joy in their life. And if I can do that, even if it's for one game that he showed for an hour and it wasn't the game that he wanted, I did something. That's how I look at it. And other people have got this, can reciprocate. It's up to them. I don't beg or ask or anything like that, and I don't want it even, really. I've got a lot that I can do. I'm doing my film shorts, my game shorts. I used to do friends, but that was friends suggesting games, but that was difficult because I had to get in touch with them, and my mum's not very well, and to be quite honest, it's very difficult for me to get videos out. But just so you know, by the way, Steve, although I didn't celebrate it, my last film video on Tron was my 500th video. 500! And I've done 190 blogs. So maybe that gives an indication that I am not just a blog channel. Everybody keeps saying he's known for his blogs. Well, yeah, I am, but I'm more. I like films, I like soundtracks, I like games, I like comics, I like statues. It goes on and on and on. It's not just a blog. And that's why it's called a retro zone. And that's why sometimes I go, oh, please don't mention I just do a blog. I'm not just a blog. I'm like any other channel. Variety, variety, variety. So, anyway, there you go. It's a little thing. So on to the questions, you say. Question 1. He always does more than one, you know. Greedy little sod. He's put 3.5 inch and 5.25 floppies. Which did you enjoy using and collecting the most? I didn't include the Amstrad's 3-inch discs, as I hope you'd never use those damn awful things. I did. I used them because I had, for a very short period of time, one of those Amstrad word processor. What was it? Was it the 8256? I can't quite remember what it was. And that used them bloody awful 3-inch disc. It had a version, I think, of WordStar on it. The printer was great. Software wasn't particularly great. Discs were atrocious in it. They slotted into the monitor and awful. Work sometimes, not others, all that sort of kerfuffle. I remember the only game I had on it was Batman, an isometric game. And it was a green screen. Yeah, I didn't have it long. Anyway. What was I getting at? Yeah, so I did use those 3-inch discs, but I had more 3.5-inch discs than 5.25-inch floppies. But I'll always go back to your first love, and that was probably the 5.25-inch floppy. And the reason for it, I've told the story a million times. I used to be at school and I used to charge, and that's terrible of me, I used to charge people in the computer club to have double-sided discs by cutting a notch out the other side. You could turn the disc over and have double capacity. It was just for a short period of time, and it funded me to be able to go out and buy my own discs, double-side my own stuff, and therefore have more games and stuff for the Apple and for the Commodore PET. Those were the two machines. But I had a shitload of Commodore 64 discs because I bought a disc drive after a year of having the Commodore 64, and it was still, at that time, was more expensive than the Commodore 64 was. But I saved and saved and saved. I had the luxury of being able to fix and repair Oryx and Spectrums and, you know, the early 8-bit machines, and sell them fixed and buy that disk drive within a year. So I was very proud of that, because you ain't going to get very far with paper rounds or mowing people's lawns. So, you know, I had Bruce Lee and Law of the West and lots of things that were the Sci-Fi Trading Company. That was a disc that Sid Meier's Pirates. I'll talk about Sid Meier in a bit. And, you know, a number. I remember having Ultima. Can't remember which one it was, though. Had a number of Epic's Temple range, Temple of Apshai, and a number of adventure games. I remember the Scott Adams games I had, and the Infocom games. I had Leather Goddesses of Phobos and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Zork. But I also had the Quest Probe series, Spider-Man, Hulk, Fantastic Four, and even the earlier adventures, The Count, Adventureland. But I remember having those more on the VIC-20 than the Commodore 64 because they were on cartridge. And you had to have the cartridge because you needed a memory expansion. And it took me an age to buy the memory expansion. I had more 3.5K games than I did expanded games until the last year of me having the VIC-20, where suddenly I was playing all sorts of games that were 8K, 16K. But I'm going off topic here a little bit. I've got a soft spot for the 5.25 inch floppy, and I will stick with that, even though I had a shitload of 3.5 inch because of my Amiga. My Amiga meant that I had a ton of them. A lot of them are originals, but I would say the majority were copies. But that's because I was buying the machines. I've already mentioned before that I had an A1000, I had an A2000, I had an A4000 for the shortest period of time because that's when I moved to PC. But I also had an A600, never had an A1200. But my 4000 was my 1200, if you see what I mean. And I was into ray tracing, Mandrabolt generators, deluxe paint, all of that sort of stuff. And therefore I used discs like it was water for those machines. And when I got the PC, 5.25 was a dead medium. On my PC, I used, funnily enough, 3.5 inch floppies, but I also had a zip disk, and I actually had an inbuilt zip disk and a portable zip disk because in the 90s I was using them at work and I saw the power of them. But that was a dead format after about 2 or 3 years. And as soon as CD writers and DVD burners came in, it was the writing on the wall, I think, for that particular medium. But it's an interesting medium to look up on the history of things if you're a young millennial listening to this. Go and have a little look. It's like talking about somebody who used film in a camera and is now using digital SLRs. You still need to know your history. So it's good that. Question 2. Looking at modern gaming, what do you miss the most from the old days? Oh, wow. What do I miss? I will say one thing. Even though the big box was a pain in the arse sometimes because of space, I used to love the manuals. You get them now in PDF or you get them inbuilt in the game or electronic in some way. Never felt the same about that. Who wants to sit at their computer turning a page of a manual that's in black and white as well? They used to be in colour, you know. Gorgeous looking things, glossy, you know. You want it in front of you like this while you're playing the game. You don't want to have another monitor where you got the manual open and who had 2 monitors back then? These were CRT monitors in the early 90s. So that I miss. I don't like, and it's not about the old days, but you had sort of like a book that told you about the game, and that was your only information source. And as I kept playing role-playing games, these NPCs, like they're called non-playable characters, they handheld you. If there's one game, and I can't remember the name of it now, role-playing game, I went away and a month later I came back, an NPC came up to me and told me where I was in the game now because I'd been away for so long. You're supposed to remember it yourself. And some people will think, well, isn't that a help? Isn't that better? And I go, but it's hand-holding. if it's open box, sandbox type game, you need a little bit of prodding, but you don't need it to that extent. Handholding, pain in the ass. But I think most of the games I knew, because of the memory size, there was an end. And in a lot of games now that I play, it seems like the end is a grind away, and a bloody long way away at that. More memory, more space, more time for you to develop a world. That world can be in a galaxy, not a universe. And it just seems to me that you ain't going to have a 30-minute game. You have to go to the arcade ones. And then whenever I'm thinking about an arcade type-ish game, they do some great visuals, don't get me wrong, but I'd rather put my Mister on and play the ones of old. So I tend to find that when I'm looking for a PC game now, I look for one with depth, but not so much that the control scheme you got to learn, and if you don't play it every day, you forget, and you therefore get lost because you can't remember what all the moves were. Spider-Man is a lot like that, the game that came out for the PS5 and the PS4. You picked up so many abilities, and they were so all over the shop in regards to what joystick move you had to do, that you couldn't remember how to put it into camera mode to take a photograph, or how to do a web trick where you grabbed onto the enemy, webbed him up, and hung him from a lamppost or something. You'd forget what that move was. It's a bit like trying to learn Street Fighter 2 for the first time. You go away, and a month later you come back and you've got to remember it all again. So, yeah, I do like the odd little short game. And there are quite a few on the PC, so I can't really miss those, can I? I think that's the end of that one, Steve. My salute to you. Shit, you're just too good. I have to do my salute at the end as well. Miss our chats, guy. Hope you're doing well. Hope your videos are coming along. Glad the game was something that you like. Stop being a hard ass, though, about accepting things. My God, it was like pulling teeth. Jesus, please accept it. My God. If you send it back, all I'm going to do is have it in my wallet. The sale will be over, blah, blah, blah. Accept it as a gift for what it is. And if you want me, if I want you to do a video on it, consider it. It's all to make you, to show my appreciation as a friend and make your channel grow. It's what it's there for. So anyway, we move on. And salute, my friend. And we get to Ian Hill, the Ramblings, one of my biggest supporters. Lovely, sweet guy. Bastard. Got so many people that love him, watch him. I'm so pleased to be part of his life a little bit, that I make him laugh. That's the thing. I make him laugh. And that's great. So let's read what he's got to say. And if you're not subscribed to him, please go over there. He says the same for me, but I lose subscribers that way. I hope you gain them this week, Ian. You deserve them. But I digress. You've put, hi, Delboy, because I'm reading it out now. Hope you and your mother are doing okay and getting through each day without any more disruptions and problems. I have to say how well you did to do your blog again. It can't have been easy. It showed your determination that nothing would stop you doing your blog. No, if anybody wants to know my determination, look back to when I had my heart attack. I was there doing the blog that wasn't. Midweek, I just come out of hospital. First thing I did was turn the PC on and do that. Jesus, aren't I stupid? I think, like many of your friends and followers, we would miss it if it wasn't there, the blog. It's become part of the routine of weekly watches. It also shows us how you are coping with life as a full-time carer. Yeah, I try. Enjoyed our live as always. We agreed that eating raw fish is awful. Yeah, bloody well it is. Ooh, the sushi. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I'm feeling cold today. The nurse came as well. When the bandages and dressings were removed, it felt very chilly. I had a surprise yesterday. My son has subscribed to Disney Plus and was able to share it on my TV. So I binged watched most of the second season of Andor. And just got 2 episodes left, and I dare say by the time I'm looking at this, you've watched it. But you can watch Alien now, Alien Earth, and a number of other stuff. I'll be hounding you now to say, have you watched any Marvel stuff? If you haven't, what the bloody hell's wrong with you? Only kidding. But there you go. Jamie also sent me some films. Little bastard Jamie is. If you haven't heard already, that's Muckman-Movies. He always slips in something like this. Here we go. So Jamie also sent me some films. I've just watched one, a music documentary called Dig from 2004. It was about 2 bands, the Deadly Warhols and Brian Jonestown's Massacre. It was a look at indie bands and their struggles and relation with the record industry. Yeah, I do like those, I must admit. I could see why this documentary was widely acclaimed. I enjoyed it. My film of the week was See No Evil from 1971, starring Mia Farrow, directed by Richard Fleischer. Set in the English countryside, it was a horror thriller. She was recently blind from an accident on a horse and ends up being stalked by a serial killer. Her performance was excellent. It kept me on the edge of my seat. Very tense at times. Seen a lot of films like that, you know. Horse accident or whatever it is, and going blind or whatever it is. There's a number of those. I mean, there's that one. No, I can't remember it. It will come back to me when I finish the blog. That's the bad side of doing a blog. My question this week is, if Doctor Who had been cancelled in 1969, would the first and second Doctor's stories be still highly regarded? Wow, what a great question. And Doctor Who as well. Let me think about this for a minute. Let's see, 2 Doctors, 1969, black and white. No other Doctors. Yeah, there'd be a high impact. Think about this. They've jumped an awful lot of those stories, and we are saddened by that. And there's some missing stories that might be coming. Mentioned all that last week. But if you only had 2 Doctors, how many people would be put off by the fact it's black and white? How many people would be put off by the format it's in because nothing else was tried? How would it be for physical media and how it would sell compared to some of the later Doctor Who episodes? There's less legacy, so there is less importance to bring it back. Look at The Outer Limits as an example. That it did come back for 7 seasons, but its original run was 1.5. They call it 2, but it was 1.5. And its legacy has a niche market, like Twilight Zone. All to do with black and white, format, all that sort of stuff. But we know different. We know how fun it is. So, yeah, I'm going to say that Doctor Who would have a huge impact, but I hope it wouldn't be one that they couldn't turn around, because there's still a legacy there. There's still a lot of enjoyment. And I hope that even with that short number of stories, because it would only be Pac Troughton and Will Hartnell being the Doctor, that it would shine through. So that's my answer to that. All my best wishes to you, and have a grand time. No, my pleasure. Thank you very much. Wonderful, as always. Just trying to find my cursor now. Move down. just going to take another break. I'm sorry, I've found myself, but my eyes, so I'm just going to go and water them a little bit. I just want to say, Ian, one of my biggest followers and biggest supporters, and I do something with him on a Wednesday. Please come along to Wednesday. Please subscribe to him. We're both creators, and we want to be able to show our wares. I can't put it fairer than that. So with that, I'm just going to take another short break, and I'll be back in a moment. And I'm back, and I'm glad to be here. So that's absolutely marvellous. So we've just finished talking about Ian Hill, and by the way, I can't say any more than go over and subscribe. The guy's got a massive amount of stuff for you to see. Always find this difficult, but whenever I go and see somebody new, I'm interested in their back catalogue, right? And I don't think a lot of people do that. Do so. How they got from where they started to where they come is probably one of the most important things for me to know about a person. And I've always thought to myself, wow, wasn't it rough at the beginning, and how you are now. And so I can't express enough that if somebody's got an awful lot of content, go and do that. You know, it may look rough, but there'll be a lot of stuff there, and that'll be stuff that they'll want to impart to you, and might not be repeated because they've been doing it for so long. Perfect example, Mainmeister, 13 years, and he constantly turns around and he says, maybe I've said everything that I can possibly say because I did it at the beginning and I'm going over old ground. It's still interesting because it's a different eye, an older eye looking at something, but just think what it was like when he first started to impart on it. The difference between the two. Brilliant. Anyway, that's just something that I don't think a lot of people talk about on YouTube much, is the importance of a back catalogue. But anyway, we get to my friend Colin Jones, aka Ponder. Let's see what he's got to say. Bam, sure he's going to be correcting me on something. Anyway, let's see what he's put. I hope things are going smoother for you and your mum now. Sending my regards as always. Any news on the driving licence? Well, I think I've mentioned that. Maybe something this week. It was Wrath of Khan with the Moby Dick reference, by the way. Now, it is First Contact and Star Trek The Next Generation that has the biggest indication of Moby Dick than Wrath of Khan. And I'll explain why. In First Contact, it is Picard's story where he was taken over by Locutus. It's made perfectly clear right at the beginning where he's reenacting what happened, and then later on informed by the fact that the Borg are attacking Earth space again, and that it might be bad that a captain that's been taken over by the Borg might have split loyalties. He goes back in time, and as a person that comes onto the Enterprise, and they have to blow up the ship. This is something that Picard needs to do because he needs to reaffirm that there is a line that's drawn, and it's drawn here. And there's a conversation that goes on in that film where there's this lovely lady that turns around and says, yes, you're Captain Ahab going after your Moby Dick. That's the reference. And that is the bigger reference than the Wrath of Khan. So you are right, but you're also wrong. So anyway, that's a fun little thing, talking to somebody who's watched Star Trek as much as I have. But Zookeeper, he says, uses the same hardware as Quicks. It was very, very busy, and the best way to score is not by trapping the animals, but by jumping over them. I've seen one guy get 4 million points for a single jump. Not sure this would be effectively ported to the Commodore 64, but I could easily be wrong. And it was one that I just know's not been converted very much. It was a guess, and it's one that I remember, so I mentioned it. Being a sprite-based game, I thought it might work on the Commodore 64. As a bitmap graphic game, probably it'd work on the Amstrad, the MSX, definitely the NES. Yeah. Let's see what else. Literally is one big misused word, but my personal cringe is the misuse of decimate, which is often used in place of obliterate. Decimate just means reduce by a tenth. Yeah, decimal. Yeah, and I've used literally earlier on. Don't shoot me. It was before I got to your comment. But I actually used it correctly, hopefully. Regarding email clients, have you ever encountered Incredimail? No, I haven't. Never used it, but it has the habit of turning a one-paragraph mail into a multi-megabyte, poor-taste multimedia experience. And this was in the days of dial-up, early broadband. I just used AOL and used their client in the early days of dial-up. When it came to broadband, I was lucky enough to be in an IT environment enough for me to have 3 copies of Outlook and Office 365. Well, it was called Office. It was just called Microsoft Office back then. They had numbers like 17, 16, 13. So I had Outlook and I used that. Not the best client either. My current email client is Thunderbird, but I've been using loads of Outhouse itself, Outhouse Excess. You can guess their real names. Yes, I can. Forte Agent, Fortalude Dialogue, also new readers, Claws Mail, K-Mail, Mutt, K9 Mobile, Gmail, well, I use that, Evolution, and a few more I can't remember. Gmail is web-based. I don't have it as an app on my PC. It is on my phone, though. I could have mentioned Gmail. I think I did, actually, but I did call it a web mail service, and I still use it more web mail than as an app. My question: do you have any favourite newer comic strips? And if so, what are they? My most recent find is called Adult Children. It's bloody hilarious. Do you know what? I've been a Marvel fan for years. It's no secret. Very rarely going past that now, but in the past I was collecting DC and IDW and Image and all of those other comics. And so I was into things like V for Vendetta, Watchmen, all of those. Let me think. Can I think of any? There's Lock and Key, which is a TV series, which was a comic. That was good. Sweet Tooth is a graphic novel come comic, which explores characterization in a way of how you interact when you're an outsider. That's good. Saga was something that I collected in the very early days. It's a sci-fi mature reading comic. Take that in mind when reading it, because it is a 18 comic, and that's because of some of the graphic violence and adult themes to it, but it's sci-fi and I quite enjoyed that. But I think my most enjoyable would have been the early days when I was getting V for Vendetta and that. Yeah, V for Vendetta can be quite political. Saga can be as well, don't get me wrong. But I haven't got really many ones to talk about because they're mostly been picked up and turned into TV series. Walking Dead being a particular one, Strange Days being another, and I haven't really been reading those, and only just about scratching the surface of watching the TV shows. Although Walking Dead I did watch all the way through, but not its spin-offs. So yeah, I've got a lot of catching up to do, but it sounds very interesting, this Adult Children. I'll look out for it. Possibly I might give that a shot when I speak to my comic book distributor, because it's not a shop, it's a warehouse that I get my monthly stuff through. Salute, my friend. Thank you very much. Absolutely brilliant. And again, another YouTube creator, collaborator, and person that does such fantastic things, always explaining himself, always imparting knowledge, also showing the dangers of our country in regards to riding a bike on a totally vehicle-led road system, etc., etc. Some fantastic stuff. Moving on now to Salute. Moving on to my friend Martroid. What's he put? He always puts just a couple of lines, and it's always just informative. It says, that must have been incredibly frustrating, losing over 2 hours of recording and having to start from scratch. Still, the final result turned out great, and I really appreciate your perseverance, Del. See what I mean? Just such a nice thing to say. Appreciated that you took the time out just to write a couple of lines. I think I'd miss you if you weren't here, Martroid. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. So we'll move on now to Carl Todd, and I'll say salute to Martroid and read out what he's got to say. He's put, hi Del, I hope I hope that the last week has been less stressful and the things are improving. I especially hope that your mum isn't in as much pain. Hard to say at the moment. We've only just started on the new tablets, but we live in hope. Thanks for taking the extra time to re-record the answer question again. This week has been one of those weeks that I've been happy to just get through. Yeah, many long days working into the early hours to assist in dealing with customer issues and being impacted by a rollout of a new VPN config that broke everything. Yeah, virtual private networks can be really quite tricky, I have to say. Some questions for you that are related to the previous questions. Oh, okay, it's not a problem. Last time I asked you about buying items for your collection that you didn't particularly like, but you wanted them to complete your collection. Well, this week I had an instance of that since the Star Trek Section 31 arrived in the post. And I know your pain with that, because I bought that in steelbook for £1.50 just to have it in my collection. But my God, is it one I'll never watch again. It's absolutely atrocious. I had waited until it was heavily discounted in the Amazon sales when I added it to the collector's database. I wonder if it would be the lowest rated item based on the IMDb Internet Movie Database ratings. I sorted the database on the Internet Movie Database ratings, and I found that my lowest rated item was Hellraiser 9 Revelations. Well, that's pretty bad, yeah. With a rating of 2.7, and my highest rating items are the Breaking Bad seasons that have a 9.5 rating. I wonder what your highest and lowest rated items in your movie collectors is. I'd have to do a sort for that, but I can guess that Section 3 will be pretty low. I don't know if I've got Hellraiser 9. The last time I bought the Hellraiser box set, it was the first 4 or 5, and I haven't seen beyond that. I can tell you, when it comes to the highest, I should think probably Game of Thrones is going to be up there. Just like you, I've got Breaking Bad, so I've got that as a 9.5 myself, because I loved that series, so I bought that as a steelbook set, along with Walking Dead, that were all of these would have been at some point in a 9 point something. Yeah. I don't think I've got a 10. I don't think there is one. Probably is. I haven't looked. Never really thought about it before. I'll do that. Probably mention it in Ian's stream. And probably mention it next week if I remember. All right? So that's my pledge to you. Number 2. Also previously asked about things that are annoying with the music releases. This week I also received the New Order Brotherhood Definition Edition. Well, that sounds good. I like New Order. In the post, since that had also been discounted. I think that the original recommended retail price was 150 quid. Holy shit. It's a great set, depending on your musical taste, of course, but I find it so annoying that these expensive sets will ship with DVDs instead of Blu-rays for the video content. There will be some costs in upscaling the video, but for such an expensive set, I think it could be covered by the price of the box set. I know that even now DVDs outsell Blu-rays, but I think a lot of those sales are impulse type sales due to the lower price point. I expect that the people who are buying expensive box sets would have upgraded from DVD to at least Blu-ray. Any thoughts on this, Del? Loads. Absolutely tons from what you've just put there. I do get it, what you're talking about. The game industry, let's go back to that. Perfect example, the Commodore 16, the Commodore Plus 4. Wrote a game. What do you target? Do you target the lowest denominator or the higher one? If you do the higher one, you can only aim at the Plus 4 market. Did that sell more than the Commodore 16? Where the Commodore 16 game would also run on the Plus 4. So, you've got a system that you write for the lowest denominator. There you go. So, films, DVD, Blu-rays, quite right. In the film industry, they bring out two different ones. In a box set, you get, it seems, the lowest denominator, which does seem strange for such an expensive set. Why don't you do a numbered set and do part DVDs and part Blu-rays? Wouldn't be too hard to do. Marketing would have to be different. Probably you'd have sales left over of ones that didn't sell well, probably from the price point. But I get it. I've only just started getting into the Blu-ray music collection. For so long I had lots of DVDs. A lot of my Elton John stuff always had a DVD in it, never a Blu-ray. I get it. But you have to look at that lowest denominator thing, and they're in the business of making money. Glad you got it discounted though. I don't think I can show you one where I believe it's exactly the same. Yes, I do. I think it's still here. Yeah, this is a box, an Elton John one. Bought it heavily discounted. Just looking to see if it's got a DVD in it. Anyway, it's called the Elton John Jewel Box. Just looking at that corner. I think this falls into the same trap. Not sure. But I do know that I've got a lot of things that you've just talked about. So I totally get where you're coming from. By the way, I missed out on that box set. Initially, it was too expensive. When it did arrive, it was broken. I had to send it back, and it came from Japan for my replacement. So there's a bit of a story. So I hope that answers that. And number 3, what is your favourite puzzle type game? E.g. Tetris, Lemmings, etc. Oh, wow. Now, I'm not a big puzzle player. I will say this. But I love Tetris, yeah. Could you count Buster Move as a puzzle? I think so. Getting the 3 colours and having them drop down is the same as Tetris dropping weird, objects down, in a block format. Zuma is instantly the same as Buster Move. For the longest period of time, early on in the PC, I played Mahjong. That's a puzzle game. And Bejeweled, believe it or not. Loved Bejeweled. Don't like the new one. All that, ever since that Candy Crush shit came out, it sort of like has dampened people's enthusiasm for that type of game. There was a game called Locomotion, which is a slide puzzle thing where you have to get a train from one place to the other and there's a gap. There was a game on the 64 called Confusion, which had a very early Rob Hubbard tune on it, which was similar, leading a spark to bombs or whatever. So I played those to death. Moving forward, Portal. That comes to mind. Portal. Third person, a first person game where you make portals, you go through them and you come out somewhere else. And there's a lot of physics in that. There was an indie game played to death when it first came out. One of the first or early indie games, actually, that I played on the PC called Fez. And the whole tower turned round, which was a puzzle in itself, because you sometimes find that you were trapped, you couldn't go anywhere, but actually if you rotated it round, there was a path that took you around another way to get to where you needed to go. I love that. There's a Spectrum game, by the way, that's been done homebrew that I've been looking at, that I can't remember the name of it though, which is identical to Fez, involving a little frog or a rabbit, I think. But getting into physics, the last big puzzle game I played was something called Polybridge. And I liked it because it's a structural game where you have to think engineering wise how you're going to structure a bridge for traffic to go across it. And some of the gaps were so large you had to use your ingenuity to strengthen the bridge. That was brilliant. Love that. Other than that, don't really play many puzzle games. They're in the games, all that. You need to find the combination to open this door. You need to use a pick to actually open up a locked door, like in Atomfall or Kingdom Come. All of those little mini games are in there, but they're neither in or there, and sometimes they can take you away from the story a little bit, or the action that you so crave because you've been reading a lot of dialogue. So, yeah. And I dare say there's a lot of role-playing games that have got little rhymes or poetry in it that tell you about something that's going to happen later on in the game that you got to remember and all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, that's brilliant. All the best to you and your mum. And I've got to say thank you, my friend. Absolutely brilliant questions. Hope I've given you food for thought. Maybe I'm wrong. I can be. Lots of times. And we move on to my mate Muckman. Oh, what's he got to say? He's put, "Hi Dowboy. Hope everything is as well as it can be. I've had a very anxious week." Yes, now I'm going to read this out. I haven't read this yet, but I do know about this because of a post. And also I put my total thoughts into a disclaimer in Ian Hill, the Ramblings live stream, where I was so sorry to hear this news. So sorry. You wouldn't believe how sorry I was. And I don't think it came across very well, possibly. So I'll read this out. He said, "I've had a very anxious week. I went for an examination at the dermatologist hospital and I was told I possibly have a form of skin cancer. I had a biopsy today, so I'm crossing my fingers. But if the consultant is correct, it's called basal cell carcinoma, which is found in the epidermis, top layer of the skin. It's a form of cancer which is easier to treat than, say, a melanoma. But I've had this skin lesion on the side of my head for a while. I had a 40-week wait just to be seen. I'm so very worried because in rare cases it can spread to your bones." Yeah, this is what I heard, and I was so upset about it. Anyway, I've started my 31 days of horror. Right, before we go any further, that's such a sad thing, and it just puts into perspective your own particular problems. And there was something in the week that was taken the wrong way, and I apologised for it, to the point where I didn't know quite what to do. He's a friend, and it seemed I'd come across like I didn't care because of the way that YouTube uses thumbs up and thumbs down. Well, I'm never going to thumbs down something that somebody's just said, and thumbing up something looks like it doesn't make you care. I hoped my comment explained, but yeah, in retrospect I shouldn't hit the thumbs up, but then your logarithm goes down, and so therefore you don't get your people and your content out to people. So I even quandered myself, should I hit the thumbs up button? And it was the wrong thing to do. And I felt bad, and that's why I've done so many comments now to Muckman in Ian Hill the Ramblings channel. I did it in his own post and in private messages. So I'm hoping it now comes across that how in the world could someone like me with so many problems be happy that someone's got cancer? I mean, to me it's unheard of. But, you know, if it came across wrong, it came across wrong. What can you do other than be eternally sad and probably not comment on those sort of things again? I'm thinking about it. I don't know. But I've always, when you've got as many problems as I've got, very supportive of my friends. And I hope that comes across. But anyway, he's put, I've started my 31 Days of Horror Marathon and I watched Friday the 13th last week. I was most upset that they killed a snake for real. Didn't know that. Unbeknownst to the owner on the snake, which I found to be abhorrent. I really can't do with animal cruelty in films. It really isn't necessary and puts me off watching the film again. Well, I didn't know that. I've watched that film loads of times and I know the scene you're talking about. There's that film Cannibal Holocaust, which I've got, and it's because I was watching. I was in a part of a watch along, and watch alongs are great because you get to see films or be told films that you ought to watch. And I watched this turtle being killed and they eat it as well on film. It wasn't necessary. The film director has over loads and loads of time given the reason why he did it. I get it. That doesn't necessarily mean that I agree it should be in there. I believe it shouldn't, but that's just my opinion. I won't watch that film again, but I did like the soundtrack, and the film came with the soundtrack in it, so I got it. But I'll never watch it again. No. Once was enough. Didn't need to see that again. Salute, my friend Jamie, and please, I hope only the best for you in the future, and I hope you come out the other side and you've got good news. I could do with some good news, even if my news is always going to be bad from now on. There are good days. So we move to my friend Rocket Bunny, not a person who has a YouTube channel that I'm aware of, but fantastic guy. And oh my God, War and Peace I've got to read out here, so I better do it quite quickly. Hey Del, thanks for keeping me company while I upgraded a few bases and flew around the Euclid Galaxy in No Man's Sky this evening. I lost reception for a bit while traversing a black hole, but apart from that, I managed to catch all of did. Well, I'm glad you're okay in your game. I have to say, considering you were recording your blog for the second time, you did a great job by keeping things moving at pace, but still taking the time to answer everybody's great questions so well. Very professional. PC problems are always a bummer. I'm very glad I got a new one a couple of years ago before I was made redundant. It's been one less thing to worry about. The old one lasted a good 10 years or so, with almost no issue. I upgraded the memory, CPU cooler and a couple of graphics cards in its life, and that's what I'm doing at the moment, and I can't afford another one. Paying for my mother's care has just made me down here, and it's sad. But there we go. I'm glad last week has ended a little better by the sound of it. You seem quite upbeat regarding your cousin's visit. Makes a big difference, getting another family member to help, or at least be there on the phone if needed. Donna, wonderful person, yeah. Less contact this week saddens me, but she works and I work, so it's difficult. And obviously working on those problems that I mentioned last week, just in passing and very briefly. I did have a chuckle. LFG's Gamer, great first question. For me, the word basically has triggered me since the 2000s. Often at work, I would hear people use it in a meeting maybe 10 to 20 times in the space of 10 minutes when presenting something. It quite drives me nuts. Most of the time it's because people lack the vocabulary to articulate and clarify what they are trying to explain, or they go in without a script. Do understand that. They waffle, they fill in gaps. I understand it. Now I've told you, maybe it will drive you even more nuts hearing it also. No, I in fact, I wish I actually had brought that one up. It is mentioned an awful lot at work. My question this week in regarding Steam. Oh, okay. I wonder what that is. I've noticed your games are hidden and I've never been able to see any of the games you are playing. Is this intentional? I've not seen anyone else do this on my Steam list before. Sometimes when playing a new game I think, oh, Del might like this, and then I hear you say you've played it already, like Core Keeper. Yeah, and I played Core Keeper in a live, by the way. It wasn't a video. I do apologise for making that difficult. On the other side, I often browse my friends' games wish lists to get the inspiration for new games to play myself, and I know some of yours would be right up my street. Yeah, I tell you what, it's forgotten, but it was intentional. And you can still see what games I bought by the activity stream, but you can't see my game history. And I'll explain why. There was a period of time that people were buying me games and not realizing that I might have them on another system, like Good Old Games. And it upset me so much that people were buying things and I had to reject it and say, I'm sorry, you might not be aware of this, but I've got this in Good Old Games, or Green Man Gaming, or some other platform, So my wish list then suddenly turned into something that people thought that I would like them to buy for me, which is very nice of them. But they're on the wish list generally because they're 60 quid, and it reminds me that when there's a sale on, it might have come down to a £5 for me to buy. I don't want people to look at that list and spend a £30 game on me. And the problem was people could see it, so I then hid it, took the feature off, and I forgot that it's on. To be quite honest, I thought I turned it off years ago, so I'll probably go back to turning that off, but it still remains the same. I might have some of this stuff that you might want me to play on Good Old Games, or another platform, or I've got it there solely because I'm interested in buying that game, but it's got to come down to a price that I think it's worthwhile. I'm never going to remember in 4 years' time that I was interested in Atomfall, say, and I don't want somebody just before a sale buying the game for 30 quid and then it goes in the sale for a £5, which is my intention to buy it at that point. I've actually got Atomfall, by the way. I'm just mentioning that as an example, as an AAA tier game. So yeah, it was intentional, but not intentional anymore. And I realise what you're saying, and it's making me think twice. So I might turn that off. Might have a little look at that later on. You continue. I'm also trying to think of a game we could play together again. If you're up for it. I'm always up for something, but it's very difficult with my mum because of the 9 o'clock sort of time scale that I finish, and the early time I have to go to bed because of the sleep apnea problem that isn't there. If you see what I mean. But they think it might be there, and I've therefore got to have a piece of equipment that proves it's not there and all of that sort of stuff. Of course, it would have to be at something we could pick up and put down quickly, or maybe squeeze in for an hour, because that's about as long as I've got, an hour. Also, once your mum is settled for the evening. You mentioned Astroneer edit. Having seen Steve's video, I guess you meant Astronomics. Yes, I did. And I bought Astronomics as well, which I hadn't heard of. I have the former, and I've got Astroneer, by the way, as well. Never played it. I have. I see it has co-op. It does. One we could both go blind in. Well, we wouldn't go blind because I've played it, but I haven't played it in a year and a half. And it's had many updates since then. It's a great game. I'll just explain it. You land on a planet. There's all sorts of resources. You've got a hoover or a laser type thing, and you can move the ground and manipulate the ground. You can build, you can actually take it away. You can actually delve and dive into the core of the planet, all the way to the center and out the other side. That's how, it's not voxel, but it's sort of polyagonal type game. And it's gorgeous. I played it quite a bit until Planet Crafter came along, and I played that to death. Planet Crafter, oh my God, did I play that game. Loved it. Why there isn't a game like Planet Crafter anymore, I don't know. They have added stuff. I ought to go back to it. They've added a new world, and then after the new world, they built a universe. So I ought to go back to that. But anyway, you say, let me know on Discord if you do. I understand if you're too busy, but the offer is always there. If you fancy it, mate, I do. I really ought to return the favour by getting a server and playing something on it. We played Valheim, didn't we? And we played Minecraft, I think. No, we didn't. We played Valheim. And there's Enshrouded and a load of others that we've both got that possibly we could do. Or anything. Anyway, you've put, great blog again, Del. Take care and best wishes to you and your mum. Then you put 2:32:35. I think that's 2 hours 32:35. My devoted philosophy. No matter how I'm feeling, a cup of tea can put the world to rights. And doesn't it all? And do you know how many cups of tea my mum has during the day? Too many. She goes to the toilet a lot. I have to get her onto it. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And salute, my friend. And we move finally to Frank Holder, and I think he's just doing a correction here from what I can see because of the one line. Thanks for reading and replying to my post. It was an Atari 600XL I sold. Maybe if you've not seen that one, as it wasn't as popular as the 800 or the 800XL. No, of course I know the 600XL. I know my history of Atari. But when you put A600, whatever it was, I instantly thought Amiga 600, or it was abbreviated to something else. I couldn't work it out at the time. But that's me and my Amiga brain. Do you know what I mean? Being a mostly Commodore person, I don't instantly think all of the Atari models. They had the 1200XL, the 800, the 600. We've got the 520, the 720. You see what I mean? They've Jaguars and all sorts of stuff. And then in my head, there's also the ones that they had at concept and never released, and all sorts of stuff. Do you know what I mean? The Lynx, one of the first handhelds they brought out. Sometimes you can't remember all the model numbers on a fly like a blog. So I apologise. thank you so much for that. And that's the end of the comments. So we're going to heavily now quickly go through watched on YouTube, because we are now well over 2 hours. But thank you so much for that. Absolutely brilliant. And I've got my watched on YouTube and everything here. As always, there are the top 4 which I always watch, and that is This Week in Retro, Techmoan, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. They are musts. I watch them regardless. Now, This Week in Retro had 3 subjects, like they always do. The Amstrad CPC was perfect. Found that very weird as a subject. And by the way, the end of that was the Amstrad CP was perfect and not open to criticism. Oh my God. Don't ever put a line like that in something, because as far as I'm concerned, it opens the door to say, bloody well is. It's got its faults, right? It was a fun thing, don't get me wrong. But I just went, when I read that line, I went, what? The next one was Mountains Come Out of the Sky. That was quite an interesting one. And They Cost How Much? Which was a bit of a story about how much the retro side of things costs these days, and how much it was, and how inflation's looked at, and all of that sort of stuff. So that was interesting. I like that. That was really good. Overall, This Week in Retro, lovely watch for an hour. Brilliant. Techmoan. Time's up for Sony's CD slot loaders. Yeah, this is Techmoan talking about slot loaders in any form, CD or mini disc or anything else. They use belts. Some of the systems were so miniaturized into cube type formats that you have to take the whole assembly apart just to get to a small belt that's no bigger than that, because it can't bring the mechanism in or it can't bring the mechanism out. Fantastic. You want to see that, and what he had to do to fix it. Finding out later on he didn't have to go that far. That would drive me nuts. Anyway, the Gadget Show, they only did shorts this week because they did a big lot the week before. So I didn't need to watch any of that stuff. But I did watch one because I watched it. I've included it in this. And then there's Chronologically Gaming, who is still in 1982. He's got to the point of doing Scramble for the Vectrex and a number of other games that were out in that particular section of his stuff. I can't wait for him to get to 1983. I do hope he still continues to do every game like he says, but possibly bring out a few more videos each week to get through that as fast as possible, because December 1982 is just full of Christmas stuff. It's going to be jam-packed full of games, because 1982 was the start of the explosion and 1983 was a huge explosion for the UK at least, and he's got to do them all, so he has to include the UK ones. So he's going to be pooled, and I mean a pool as in a water pool, pooled into all of the games that are in there. What else did I watch? Dan Monroe, Movies, Music and Monsters. Couldn't help but watch this one. It's called What Happened to the Outer Limits. Definite watch for that one. Speaks for itself. The Outer Limits TV show. Retro Read, but retro spout with a 3 for instead of an E, did Sid Meier's Pirates, a true pirate adventure, and I can't say any more. I love pirate games. I played Sid Meier's Pirates on the Commodore 64 and Pirates Gold and Pirates A Life on the Sea, I think it's called, which was more an arcadey version of it, but still fantastic. I have not come across another game quite like it. I love Navy battles at sea that work in the way that Pirates did, not the turn-based or whatever it is. They do mention in this other ones like Black Sails and all of this sort of stuff. I haven't played those because A, probably too expensive, or B, not quite Pirates. Loved Pirates. If I could find a game a bit like that, I'd be playing it. Wiki Gamer and Collector. This came up and I only watched it not because I want another gaming platform, because I've got a Mister and all of that. He said it was the best deal for $50, and he had a picture of the joystick, and the joystick was good, lovely. I thought it could work on my Mister rather than having this big Mayflash thing that I've got down here, which is so cumbersome to get out and play all the time. It was much smaller than this, but it had the same sort of like joystick and same buttons, Sanwa buttons, and it was $50. But it's a gaming system. It is the title of it was called Datafrog Y3A Max. Did a search for it, found out that it was $50 through AliExpress. If you buy it from their site, it's $69 for a one joystick version. He bought the two joystick version, and he said it was $50. That's $109 if you buy that from Datafrog themselves. So I don't really deal with AliExpress, so I've balked at it. But yeah, I was tempted, hugely tempted. Then we get to Adam Martin. This was an easy watch for me. It's called The Death of the Classic TV Shutdown. Oh, wow. Do I remember the TV shutdown? It got to 10 to 12. The BBC come in and would say, and we're coming to an end of our programming. Just like to thank everybody that's watching this. And basically, we hope to see you tomorrow where we've got a new set of programs to watch. And we'll be starting at 8 o'clock. And for now, the BBC would just like to wish you a happy evening. And we're now closed down. Goodbye. And they played the national anthem, and then you had pictures, or the broadcast just stopped. And ITV did this, and this was all before Good Morning Britain. But for the BBC, it went up until the 90s before they actually did all round 24/7 television, because the BBC finally cottoned on, and they did 24-hour news. So the news that they had on a separate channel suddenly also was broadcasted at the end of the evening for the last film that was on, or whatever program was on. So from about 10 past 12, or at the moment it's about 1:30 in the morning, you get you get News 24. Brilliant. So remember that. Millennials won't know. It's 24/7 all the time. BBC Archive. Oh, I was talking to somebody at work, and they said that they were so happy that their 3-year-old child can do addition with two numbers. So 2-digit numbers plus 2-digit numbers. So like 34 plus 54. You know what I mean? At 3 years old. And it took my mind back to Johnny Ball and Think of a Number. And I happened to mention to her, and I didn't check. I said, do you know what? The person that got me into maths was probably Johnny Ball. She's a millennial. So she said, who's Johnny Ball? So we talked about it. And I said, he's the one who basically told me how maths works in real world. And it was called Think of a Number. I said, it's a shame that the children's broadcasting, you know, basically is non-existent anymore. We used to get back out of school, I said, at about 2:45, and we'd watch TV for kids up until 5:45, when the news would come on, and we'd have a mixture of cartoons and stuff. But there was this one guy that did Think of a Number, and he told us how numbers worked in the real world, and it made my life easier, other than I still never got my head around long division. I was terrible at long division, still am. Anyway, I said adding easy, taking away easy, percentages I'm not bad at, algebra I'm okay at, long division shit at. I don't know why, I'm just absolutely awful at it. I'm better at it, and I can get my head around it and all that sort of stuff. But it's like Sudoku sometimes with stuff. And then I said, you might find it on YouTube. And I'll tell you what, your child might like it if he's allowed to watch something on YouTube or whatever it is, whatever system it is. She said, he is, and I'll do that. And she came back the next day and said, I watched one 1977 episode of it. Brilliant. He was talking about, and she told me what it was about, talking about how numbers are not have to be there, such as the football scores. He did this little skit where he was sitting behind a desk, and he said, Arsenal got some goals, and Manchester United got even more goals, etc., etc., instead of the numbers being there. And I said, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Got me excited about numbers. So I was so happy that I'd helped somebody out. This is where I feel integrated. So she made me feel integrated at work. So it was a good week, really. That was marvellous. So we move on to film, TV and soundtracks, and we get to my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings. Oh my God, man. He does so much. It does my head in. Oh, what a great guy. Love it. Love him to bits. He did Top 5 War Films, 1985 to 92, Doctor Who review of The Happiness Patrol, X-Files Season 4, Episode 24. That must be the last one, surely, of that Season 4. Package from Jamie, the little sod Jamie. Bloody hell, man. You like flipping Tony York. He sends all his shit to him. And we have Tony York Corner. And now we're going to have Muckman Corner. You know, I'm only kidding, by the way, guys. I'm only joking. It's great. And then he did a live with me. What can I say? What a nice guy. Big supporter of me. If I didn't have that in my life during the week, I don't know where my mind would be. I'd be sitting here dwelling at 9 o'clock. Thinking about my mum. Eventually going to bed. Despondent, basically. If that hasn't encouraged you to go over there, I don't know what will. Subscribe to him. Like his stuff. Look at his back catalogue. Brilliant. So, going through the normals. Mondo Chelovic Movies. He only did movies, videos for members this week. So, unfortunately, I'm not part of a patron. I don't do Patreon. I only watch stuff that people bring out that I'm not paying for. But his channel, if you ever want to know about horror films, that's the one to go to. My God. And his video, he actually gave me the biggest compliment. He actually said to me once, I loved your Laurel and Hardy, and it brought me back to my own Laurel and Hardy. And I said, do you know what? It was semi-based around yours. Is Laurel and Hardy what you need to get the whole collection? Is a store point of where to go to get information. Royalty, if ever I've seen one. Thank you, Mondo Chelovic Movies. Through the Lens, we got Jamie. He actually did a review of Tron Ares, and he said it was a bit of a mess. I'm reluctant now probably to watch that film. I'll talk about it a bit later on, and you'll know why, right? So I'll get to that a little bit later on. But Through the Lens, if you want to watch a more interesting take on a film review, go to Through the Lens. You won't be disappointed. Did you see that? Did 2 reviews. Stay, a 2025 movie review, and Maintenance Required, another 2025 movie review. Nice guy. Did you see that? He does a lot of other stuff, but I don't watch too much short stuff. But if you just want to have a happy time listening to somebody talk about his own opinion on something, great little channel. Can't go really wrong. Jim Jam Movies didn't do too many videos compared to last week, but he did do a live on Wednesday. Little sod right before doing Ian Hill, The Ramblings. But it was fun, and I asked him some questions. Trouble is, every time I ask a question, he goes back to his favourite film, Never Ending Story. So even though it was supposed to avoid Never Ending Story, my question, he'll mention Never Ending Story in my answer. So it's just fun with Jim Jam. He's a great bloke. So likeable. Deserves an awful lot of attention. Go and have a look. Commode on Film podcast did a Why Are Film Festivals and Awards Important? And it was a different take, and I can understand it now. I always thought the academies were important to a point, and then I stopped watching them because they were late at night and it was all the same crap. Full of why we've got this black actor in, full of diversity, all of this sort of stuff. It turned into a shit fest for me. What about ranking a film based on its merits? That's an idea, isn't it? But I understood the take, which is why you need to watch it. Then there was Commode and Mayo's take. he did a review of Tron Ares, and oh my God, he destroys this film, which is why, through the lenses, it's a bit of a mess. Makes me go, should I be watching this film now? Because I was looking forward to watching it, and I might still do so, but it seems very much like they've gone in a direction I won't like. And that then turns into a bit of a problem, because I'm listening to the reviews before I've made up my own mind. I think I'll still make my own mind up. Last one is Muckman-Movies, that I've just talked about earlier. He did an unboxing of an imprint film, and you will see part of that unboxing in my own set right at the end of this video, of this broadcast. And so we turn our attention. By the way, Muckman-Movies, you've got to go and look at him now. Bloody hell. Subscribe, like, all that sort of stuff. Brilliant channel. So we get to Game and Tech YouTube. It's the last page. These are my friends on Discord who I've known for years and all of that sort of stuff. Down the Rabbit Hole is the first one. What is this? A Plate of Sick is the first one. If you don't click on that just for, oh my God, is he seriously going to review A Plate of Sick? You'll get it when you watch it. And PSVR 2 Max, massive price cut and amazing. So he's bought a game for his PSVR 2, so shut off now if you haven't got a PS or a VR 2 headset. But he bought in a sale a game called Max, and he showed it off, and it looked quite good. I think the camera would do my head in of that if you couldn't change the way it works. But it looked good, and it was heavily discounted. Yeah, it was half price. It was something like 12 quid compared to 24 to 30 quid when it first came out. So that was interesting. I've only got a PSVR 1 headset. My next one is an Oculus MetaQuest 3. And I've still got my 2 as well. And so Max is not on there because I checked. Robert's Retro Gaming. I've told you, Canadian royalty. Look what he's done. Dwarf Fortress, that was the thing I couldn't know what it was called. Dwarf Fortress Classic Episode 8. Minecraft Play Episode 163. Sounds like a dart score. SNES Play Qbert Free. C64 Play Ghouls and Ghosts. Atari 8-bit Play Radiation Dump, Citadel Warrior, Star Trek. Do you know what? Every single one of those I loved. But I had great fun with Radiation Dump and Star Trek, believe it or not. But all of the rest was good. But those were the ones I enjoyed the most out of that. Salute, my friend, absolutely marvellous. And then we get to Steve's Gaming Part 2. And again, a person that's lost his channel, come back, got a new one. Got a Twitch account, does things on Twitch. And a truly wonderful friend. Little shit. As refer back to my previous bit for why I did that. So he did Homesoft Disc 81, Twitch Replay, Hall of Things, Twitch Replay, Lord of the Orb, and Astronomics Part 1 and 2, which is the game I bought for him. Glad he enjoyed that. Seems to be having fun. Seems like I hit something that might work out. It is a grind. I expect him to stop at Part 3. It's got its faults, but for the price point I bought it at, I'm not concerned at all. And new content came out for it literally on Friday. And I say literally again, but it did. It came out Friday. So that's brilliant. Salute, my friend. And moving on to Colin Jones. He did his high score kerfuffle for Wonder Boy. I take it that's on the Commodore 64 because it's Mainmeister's high score kerfuffle. But it's Wonder Boy anyway, and Wonder Boy's a great game. So while you're waiting here, go and have a little look. And then you got 20th Century Gaming, who did two things. Steel Ranger till the end. He actually completed it. And he did Commodore 64 Live. Zap issue 49. This is when the Amiga and the Commodore 64 were in the same mag. It worked to an extent. But yeah, it was interesting video. I enjoyed that. And Seb's Place is the last one, and it was we all had that one mate. The Dragon 32 story, yeah. So what he was trying to get to there was we always have that one person that, even though you bought a Spectrum, didn't buy one, they went out and bought a Dragon or something, right? And you're going to go, you're going to be sorry, what a load of shit. It was all about that, and it was fun. So interesting. 40 odd minutes long, and goes into the psyche of why we do things. So love that. That's it. That is the tech side of the blog, and I'm just going to go to my overhead cam now and show you what came through the post this week. Hopefully I'm not going to repeat myself, but the first one is Silverado. Look at that guest roster at the top. I'll put it up there. Let's see, we brought in, you might want to pause it, but they are Kevin Kline, Scott Glenn, Rosanna Arquette, John Cleese, Kiefer Sutherland, Susan Denley, Danny Glover, Jeff Goldblum, and Linda Hunt. My God, what a cast! Fantastic looking steelbook. I think that's wonderful. Definitely got to get more like that. The next one is a bit more bland. It's Hereditary. Came out earlier this year. You can see for yourself, look, what it's about. But looking forward to that one. And here's the big one. So, as I said, Muckman-Movies has got no end of these. I've only got the one. And it's one I had to have. It comes from Imprint, which is in Australia. So you can imagine how much this cost to ship. But it is all of the Journey films, Journey to the Centre of the Earth, Land That Time Forgot, all of those sort of things. They're in Blu-ray now. Marvellous. Can't wait to watch these. My God. Really going to love that. And that draws the end to this blog. I haven't forgotten that I still need to do trailers, and they will be there. It's funny. I was going to do one this week. Just trying to get to the new camera. There we go. Tried to do one this week. But it was impossible to do so. So that's the end, and I just want to say thank you very much. I'm quite tired now, actually, but my sister will be leaving in 10 minutes, so I'm going to say salute. Hope you enjoyed this. I don't beg, but if you can like or subscribe, that'd be brilliant. There will be more film and game reviews this week, hopefully, and with that, salute, and thank you so much for watching this humble recording. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.